Mental illness.
Some people giving these calls like I ought to rot in hell for killing them. I mean, here's something that was like my son.
Primates.
Well, it was just a week ago that a chimp kept as a pet nearly killed a woman.
Mutilation.
Authorities say Nash lost her hands, nose, lips, and eyelids, and may be blind after the February attack.
Today we'll tell the tale of a chimpanzee that went insane, leading to mainstream media attention as a woman fought for her life after the devastating attack. And with this story led many people to ask the question on if private citizens should be allowed to own exotic animals as pets at all. When most people think of getting a pet, they gravitate towards a dog or a cat, staples of the modern family. And while most stop at these domesticated breeds, today's story delves into the world of exotic animal ownership. For some, a simple goldfish isn't going to cut it. They're going to want something more unique. But with these more out-of-the-ordinary options comes many dangers. Because with some animals, nature will often win over nurture, no matter how caring and firm you are with training. Our story begins in October of 1995, when the animal-loving Connecticut couple Jerome and Sandra Harold traveled to a chimpanzee sanctuary in Missouri to pay $50,000 to adopt a 3-day-old primate. Being a fan of the country singer Travis Tritt, Sandra named the baby Travis, wrapped him in blankets, and returned home to Stanford with him a few days later. Believe it or not, in '95, there were no laws regulating the ownership of chimps as pets. So because of this, the couple brought back their new family member to their home they equipped with indoor cages and locks to accommodate him. They had rooms where he could roam around freely, but safely locked in when they had to leave him alone. He had free reign over the entire premises when they were with him, however. They even brought him to their work, setting up tire swings and other activities to keep him occupied. Their exotic pet was a marvel to behold, showing his intelligence on a daily basis. He could operate a computer enough to cycle through pictures that he liked to look at, and he knew how to ask what he wanted. They frequently brought him out in public, becoming a local celebrity, showing up at supermarkets, interacting with community members, and entertaining townsfolk. Although chimps have less developed intelligence than human beings, the advantage they do have is in raw power and strength. Take an average human and the average chimpanzee, and the chimpanzee will have 4 to 5 times the upper body strength. They're also much faster, clocking in at around 24 miles per hour. Also, as they age, they're more prone to outbursts. And as Travis got older, this became apparent. In the 90s, Travis had bit a neighbor's hand and tried to pull her into a vehicle when she greeted him. In 2003, a particularly notable incident happened when they were stopped at a busy intersection. The primate was sitting in his seat, and for some unknown reason, another car threw a fountain soda at Travis, hitting him squarely in the face. The confused animal unlocked his door and fled the vehicle, dragging his knuckles and darting around cars in his giant adult diaper that the Heralds had him wear in public. Soon the spectacle of a chimpanzee on the loose caught the attention of all the motorists, some of them honking and getting out to see the show. Travis, awash in attention, began hooting and showing off, clearly having a great time. Law enforcement began chasing him around the car, with Travis easily outmaneuvering them, even taking a moment to smack one chasing officer on the butt before darting away. It took nearly 2 hours to get him rounded up after becoming tired. The relieved Heralds took him home and promptly grounded the chimp. The owners were not charged with any crime, even though they were technically in violation of a recently passed law, requiring them to have a special permit to own a chimpanzee that weighed more than 50 pounds. Local law enforcement knew this, but since Travis had no history of violence, they chose to turn a blind eye. Despite being a celebrity to the city, a local primatologist voiced strong apprehension to the Heralds. At this point, although Travis was not yet fully grown, he was now sexually mature. It's no coincidence that any time you have a chimpanzee actor in a TV show or movie, the role is performed by a prepubescent chimpanzee. Adults are far too unpredictable, prone to violent outbursts, and given the fact that chimps in the wild are known to have sex up to 50 times per day, the expert warned the heralds that Travis was a frustrated ticking time bomb, just waiting to go off, advising them to send their child to a sanctuary. Sandra acknowledged the advice as sound, but by this point she was far too attached. After the tragic death of her daughter in 2000, she had fought with devastating depression and had become even more emotionally invested with her pet, who at this point was routinely referred to as her son. To make matters worse, in 2004, Sandra's husband Jerome passed away from cancer, making the primate her only family. She tried keeping in touch with her grandchildren, but became despondent, circling into a deep mental health crisis. Through all this, the only emotional connection she truly had was with Travis. They bathed together, slept in the same bed, and were attached at the hip. But by the time Travis reached about the age of 14, he was now a fully grown adult. And with that came an unmistakable change in temperament, leading to catastrophe. We'll learn more about this after a brief word from our sponsor. With the world opening back up again, many people are thinking about traveling after years of being stuck at their house. Because of this, now might be the perfect time to learn a new language with Babbel. Babbel is the new way to learn a foreign language. The comprehensive learning system combines effective education methods with state-of-the-art technology. What makes it better than the competition is that with only 10 minutes a day, you can learn everything needed to have real-world conversations in different languages. The app was created by a team of expert teachers designed for all levels of learners. And with live online classes, original podcasts, games, videos, and more, there's always something new to discover. So if you want to try out Babbel for yourself, click the link in the description down below to get 65% off your order. With Babbel, learning a new language is only a few clicks away. It was a cold morning on February 16th, 2009, when the now 14-year-old, 200-pound Travis awoke in a particularly foul mood, disobeying Sandra, making a mess, and not returning to his cage. At one point, the beast took the house keys to the back door, unlocked it himself, and went outside, ransacking the garden out in the yard. Sandra tried coaxing him back indoors and even gave him tea laced with Xanax in an attempt to calm him down. Unfortunately, this didn't work. He began tromping around the property, tapping on car doors, indicating he wanted to go for a ride. With no progress in getting Travis under control, Sandra called her friend of 30 years, single mother Charla Nash, and asked her to come over to assist. And so she did. To fully appreciate what happened next, keep in mind that a human being has a bite force of about 162 pounds per square inch. A chimpanzee has nearly 10 times that. Adding in their larger and sharper teeth, and it's clear that a close encounter attack with a chimp is potentially lethal to fight off for even the most physically fit humans. As Charla arrived, she decided to try to coax Travis back into the house using one of his favorite toys, a Tickle Me Elmo. As she emerged from the house and approached, he became enraged seeing someone else with his favorite belonging. He immediately pounced and attacked Charla, screaming as he viciously bit her face, tearing it off her skull, and mauling her hands as she tried to defend herself. The monster was relentless, as Sandra screamed at the top of her lungs trying to pull Travis off her friend, with her quote-unquote son barely even acknowledging her pleas. In a panic, Sandra grabbed a nearby shovel and hit Travis over the head with it again and again, but to no avail, as he continued to shred Charla's face off. With the shovel hits not making a dent, Sandra ran inside and came out with a kitchen knife, stabbing Travis multiple times in the back. After a few deep knife thrusts, Travis finally paused and slowly turned around, staring down Sandra with the most menacing look she had ever seen from him. Terrified, she ran to her car and dialed 911.
Send the police!
What's the problem there?
The chimp killed my friend!
Sandra waited, staying on the call with emergency dispatchers, watching in horror as Travis began eating chunks of Charla's face. The victim was unresponsive and motionless as police finally arrived on the scene 12 minutes later, with Sandra pleading with them to shoot Travis on sight. Travis, curious about the new arrival, stopped the attack and sauntered over to the driver's side of the patrol car, as the officer looked in horror at the chimpanzee, who by this point was saturated in blood. Upon opening one of the cruiser's doors, the officer opened fire, and after several shots, Travis screamed and ran off into the woods. The traumatized cop fought back the nausea rising up in him, seeing severed fingers, bits of scalp, and shredded flesh all over the grass leading up to the motionless body of Charla Nash. He immediately turned in horror, pleading with dispatch over the radio to do everything to get fire and EMS on the scene. Other officers arrived to follow the blood trail of the injured Travis, searched through the woods, and then finally found him in his enclosure, dead from blood loss. And now all they could do was try to save the animal's victim. Surgeons said that by the time Charla had reached the emergency room, she had no eyes, no facial structure, her entire upper jaw had been ripped off, and her nose was all that was left of her face, literally hanging on by a small amount of connective tissue. Travis's attack was so violent that surgeons had to pull out chimpanzee teeth that had been ripped off and were implanted into her bones. Of her hands, all that remained was a thumb. The fight to save Charla's life was overwhelming. For the next 72 hours, she had 7 surgeries, performed by 4 separate teams of surgeons. By this point, the attack had become an international sensation, sparking fierce public debate over ownership of exotic animals as pets. Paparazzi became so invasive that Charla was given armed guards in the hospital to keep photographers from violating her privacy. When her face was revealed a few months later in an appearance on Oprah Winfrey, the public looked in horror at what Travis had done to her. At the time, she had no memory whatsoever of the attack, though fragmented details did return to her as the years went by. With the medical bills piling up, Charla filed a lawsuit against Sandy for $50 million. Although Charla Nash is unquestionably the main victim in this story, it's important to highlight what kind of toll this event took on Sandra Harold. To put it simply, it broke her. Adding this to the tragic loss of both her daughter and husband while fighting off reporters harassing her over the attack was too much for this already fragile woman to handle. She would call different friends daily, sobbing uncontrollably into the phone, only talking exclusively about the Travis situation. She tried to get out of the house, spending thousands of dollars in clothes for her grandchildren she hardly saw, but never sending them, letting the boxes of purchased items stack up in her house to the point where her living space became an impassable maze. Each day was a torturous barrage of guilt, loss, and unyielding heartache. She tried focusing on her love of animals, feeding raccoons and deer that came onto her property, and trying to get into nature photography. One evening a year and a half after the incident, she was outside taking a picture of the sunset when she felt a pain in her chest. Calling a friend for help, they assumed the worst and dialed for an ambulance. Sandra was told in the ER that her aorta had a problematic bulge they needed to operate on immediately. 2 hours later, as she laid on the operating table, her lungs filled with blood before passing away. Her attorney released a statement upon her death stating, "Miss Harold had suffered a series of heartbreaking losses over the last several years, beginning with the death of her only child, then her husband, then her beloved chimp Travis, as well as the tragic maiming of friend and employee Charla Nash. In the end, her heart, which had been broken so many times before, could take no more." Charla's lawsuit against Sandra's estate settled for $4 million, and the attack victim eventually received a facial transplant surgery in 2011. Although her appearance hasn't quite returned to the normal she knew before, she has at least been able to retain a sense of her own humanity after such horrific injuries. No matter how many surgeries she could receive, her life will never return to normal. Missing functioning hands, eyes, and ears, she lives in assisted living, visited frequently by her only daughter. So there you have the tragic story of Travis the Chimpanzee. And if there's any moral to be had here, it's that you're probably better off just getting a dog. So with that, I think I'll end the video here. And until next time, thanks for watching.